Close your eyes for a moment. Imagine the weight of a glass bottle in your hand. Heavy, cool, filled with something that makes you forget. Now imagine smashing it against the ground. The crack echoes, the liquid bleeds into the dirt. And in that single moment, you reclaim your life. This is the story of a woman who history tried to forget. A woman who was bought, sold, passed between men like property. A woman who bore children she'd never see again. A woman who became the first female martyr of Assam's freedom struggle. Not in spite of being society's outcast, but because of it. Her name was Mangri Orang. And April 2nd, 1921, was the day she chose revolution over oblivion. Welcome to Neo-Educate's Career Academy, where we excavate the stories that textbooks buried, and today we're traveling to the emerald green tea gardens of colonial Assam, a place of breathtaking beauty and unspeakable cruelty. The year is 1921. While India's elite discuss independence in large halls, a different kind of revolution is brewing in the tea plantations. This isn't a story about politicians or generals. This is about a woman who climbed out of the deepest pit of colonial exploitation to strike at the very heart of the British Empire. But to understand how Mangri Orang became a revolutionary, we need to understand how the British turned her into multi-mem. Our story begins not in Assam, but in the dense forests of Hazaribagh. Here, a young woman named Mangri fell in love with a man named Somrai. It should have been simple, two people choosing each other. But Somrai had nothing, no family, no land. And in the brutal arithmetic of poverty, that meant he was nobody. When her father refused the match, Mangri and Somrai did what desperate young lovers do. They ran. They eloped, believing that love would be enough to build a new life. They were wrong. What they didn't know was that the British tea industry had perfected a system of human trafficking. It was called the Sardari System, established in 1870, and it worked like this. Brokers, called Arakatis, would scout impoverished regions. They'd make promises. Good wages, new opportunities, a fresh start. Young couples like Mangri and Somrai were prime targets. Desperate, vulnerable, easy to move. Mangri and Somrai were shuffled from one labor depot to another like cargo. They crossed the Brahmaputra River, not as free people seeking opportunity, but as indentured servants entering a system designed to break them. The tea gardens weren't farms. They were labor camps where flogging was routine and food was a luxury you earned through exhaustion. The loss that changed everything. And then Somrai got sick. In a place where workers were expendable, medical care was an afterthought. Mangri watched the only person who'd ever chosen her waste away. When he died, she was utterly alone. A woman with no family, no protection, in a world engineered to exploit her vulnerability. That's when Laxman appeared. He was a garden elder, someone who should have offered protection. Instead, he offered a different kind of transaction. He told Mangri he could help her. He'd introduce her to the Choto Saheb, the junior British officer. She'd have food, shelter. All she had to do was keep him company. This wasn't rescue. This was the British concubinage system, a calculated cycle of exploitation disguised as charity. The first Saheb gave Mangri a new name, Multi-Mem. Mem was the title for British wives, women of status. But Mangri wasn't his wife. She was his concubine, his property, his convenient Indian companion. She bore him 3 sons, 3 children, and when they were old enough, he did what British officers routinely did. He took them. He sent them away to mission schools, places where they'd be taught to be proper British subjects. Mangri never saw her children again. Then he returned to Britain, and Laxman passed her to another officer, like furniture, like livestock. The second Saheb drank heavily, and he taught Mangri to drink with him. Whether this was companionship or cruelty doesn't really matter. The effect was the same. The pain of losing 3 sons, of being passed between men, of being stripped of every shred of dignity. It was unbearable without the numbing fog of alcohol. This was intentional, by the way. The British colonial administration understood that addiction was a tool of control. They didn't just permit the flow of liquor and opium into tea gardens, they encouraged it. They profited from it. Sober workers were dangerous. Sober workers organized. Sober workers demanded their humanity back. Eventually, Mangri was passed to a 3rd British officer. By this point, she was no longer a person with dreams or desires. She was a woman drowning in trauma, using state-provided liquor to survive each day. The British called her Multi Mem. But that name was a scar, not a title. It marked her as a woman who'd been consumed by the system. Someone beyond rescue or redemption. That's who she was on the morning of April 2nd, 1921. Until she wasn't. It's early afternoon in the Nepali Pati area of Tezpur. A group of Congress volunteers are picketing outside a liquor shop. They're young, idealistic, part of Gandhi's growing non-cooperation movement. They believe that prohibition isn't just about morality. It's about economics. Every rupee spent on British liquor is a rupee funding colonial oppression. That's when they see her. A tall, beautiful woman, clearly intoxicated, approaching with a song on her lips and a bottle in her hand. She's everything they're fighting against, the visible face of colonial destruction. But they don't look away. They don't judge. They do something unexpected. They talk to her. "Why should I not drink?" Mangri demands. Her voice is defiant, but underneath, there's something else. Pain, exhaustion, a lifetime of being told she's worthless. And these volunteers, these young people who could have dismissed her as just another drunk, they meet her with love, with care. They plead with her to see what's been done to her, to understand that she deserves more than this. Mangri stares at these faces, and something breaks open inside her. All the lost sons, all the sahebs who used her, all the years of being erased. It crystallizes into a single, burning clarity. She smashes the bottle against the earth. She became a force in the tea lines, picketing shops, talking to workers, exposing the sedation strategy. And it worked. Under the leadership of volunteers like her, liquor and opium sales in the region dropped by nearly 50%. For a marginalized woman, an outcast, a former concubine, to successfully strike at a primary revenue stream, that was unforgivable. Mangri moved to the Lalmati area of Tezpur, continuing her activism. The British response to the rising tide of dissent wasn't negotiation. It wasn't reform. It was violence. In that moment, Multi Mem, the woman created by British appetites, dies, and Mangri Orang, the revolutionary, is born. During a massive prohibition drive, colonial police and military forces moved in to suppress the unarmed volunteers. The order to fire was given. Mangri Orang was shot and killed by British forces. Her blood soaked into the tea garden green she'd once been forced to pluck as a laborer. In dying, she achieved a transformation no colonial saheb could ever touch. Says Mangri's martyrdom sent shockwaves through the independence movement. Here was proof that the urge for Swaraj, for freedom, wasn't a high-minded concept reserved for the urban elite. It burned in the hearts of the most oppressed. Her death forced the national movement to recognize tea garden workers as central players in the struggle for independence. She stood at the intersection of gender, class, and anti-colonialism, proof that the common woman could be the British Raj's most dangerous adversary. Today there's a monument to Mangri Orang. It's simple, quiet, a sentinel in the landscape of her sacrifice. She holds the title of Assam's first female martyr, the first to fall in Tea Garden Green. But monuments aren't enough. Her story demands something more from us, active remembering. Because Mangri's story isn't just about the past. It's about whose stories we choose to tell, whose sacrifices we acknowledge, whose humanity we defend. History has a selective memory. It carves the names of generals into marble while the foot soldiers fade into obscurity. But every freedom we enjoy was built on sacrifices like Mangri's, on the blood of the outcasts, the exploited, the forgotten. To let her name slip back into the shadows would be a second betrayal. This episode was researched and written using historical accounts of Mangri Orang's life and the 1921 freedom movement in Assam's tea gardens. If this story moved you, share it.
এই ভিডিঅ'ৰ পৰা আমাৰ পৰীক্ষাৰ কাৰণে ইম্পৰ্টেণ্ট পইণ্ট কোনটো হ'ল অসমৰ প্ৰথম গৰাকী মহিলা আছিল মাংগৰি ওৰাং বেছিভাগ পৰীক্ষাত এই কুৱেশ্যনটোৱে ৰিপিটকে আহি থাকে কিন্তু তেখেতৰ কাহিনী জানিবলগীয়া সেইকাৰণে এই ভিডিঅ'টো বনোৱা হৈছে। So see you in the next video.